What's up? Welcome back to Trout Stories. Thanks everybody for tuning back in. Sorry we missed you guys the last 2 weeks. Things have been really hectic. We've been traveling and a lot of stuff's been going on. Thanksgiving, all the jazz. So we're back. Connor's here. No more budget GoPro clips. But we're gonna do a Trout today for you guys, and we're gonna talk to you guys about rails and outlines of your surfboard. So we have two different types of surfboard here. We have what we call a groveler, which is for smaller waves, mushier waves, and I guess just shittier waves in general. It could be ridden in good waves though, so don't take that for granted. But we're gonna talk to you about outlines. So, we're gonna take this rounder outline board, right? Bigger tail, bigger nose, and compare it to a more high performance, quote unquote, outline, what the differences are. And I tried to grab two that were pretty similar. Both of them are thrusters. They have different tails, they have different nose widths, they have different widths in general and thicknesses too. So that's the only difference. The fins are exactly the same. They're both Timmy Patterson fiberglass fins, and they both have racetrack pads on them. So we're gonna go test out these two boards. The only hard thing is this is a XTR blank. So it's glass with epoxy resin, and it has an XTR blank inside of it. So that's the only difference in construction, but it should be chill. Honestly, like, they'll be more similar in response, considering the waves are about knee high right now. So the Trout may not be super exciting, but the information will be good. So follow along. Let's go get it. Oh wait, before we go, don't forget we have Racetrack X Trout Stories merch on the website. Connor will link it in here, down there, not on the screen. So you gotta go find it in the bio. But yeah, we got Racetrack. It says "Shut Up and Go Surf" on the back, and they're super comfy for this fall. And they have a bunch of other cool stuff on there too. So go give it a look, and we are gonna go for a Trout. So I'll see you guys in a little bit. We'll talk about outlines. sick Trout. I really was not expecting waves to be as fun as they were, but luckily we had a little combo swell, so kind of gave us some waves, something to work with, you know. The original plan was actually to ride a finless surfboard to talk about rails with, because you're using rails a lot more to actually surf when you're riding a finless surfboard, because there is no fins. It's kind of like a boogie board. But anyway, what we ended up doing was riding two different boards that are both standard shortboards, but one's a little bit rounder and one's a little bit narrower and knifier. So the first board that I rode was this Timmy Patterson Alley Rat. It's got a round tail, so it's a narrower tail block, and a nice knifey nose, so narrower nose as well. It's basically like a standard thruster shortboard. And one thing that I want you to look out for is in the beginning of the surf, it's pretty easy to tell which board's which because of the color, but in the beginning of the surf, the first few waves I got, you'll notice that I had to work a lot harder to generate speed on this board. It takes a lot more wiggling the board to actually get it moving in these kind of waves because, first of all, it's less foam, it's thinner, it's narrower, and second of all, there's more rocker in the board too. So there's more curve in the nose, which you can kind of see if you put it like this. There's more curve in the nose and there's more curve in the tail. So adding more rocker means that the board's going to push more water. It's not going to sit as flush and use surface tension to stay on top of the water. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. So also, another thing I want to point out is the turns that I was doing on this board. So you'll notice the turning radius on a board like this is a lot tighter, and the rail will stay engaged a lot longer because the tail block isn't quite as wide. So this plays into effect in generating speed as well. It's more difficult to generate speed on a pintail, on a mushy small wave like this, because there's not as much surface area to float you back here. So when you put all your weight on the back of your surfboard, it wants to sink typically. So the positive of having a narrow tail block is you can control your speed a lot better if the wave's hollow and fast and heavy. Typically you'll be able to sink it more in the water and hold a rail, hold a bottom turn, hold a turn, whatever, a lot easier on a rounded tail versus a wider swallow or chop tail in this example. But so there is some positives to a round tail, but you'll notice when I come around those turns, I can arc on rail a lot tighter and a lot faster, like more power through the turn, because the narrow tail block sits in the water and holds and drives all the way through. So look out for those couple points in the beginning of the shroud, and maybe Connor will filter in some clips in there to kind of like give you an example of it, but if he doesn't, don't blame him. Now, the next board I rode was a 5'7", 19, 2.5 shortboard, round little outline board that I shaped. It was supposed to be modeled after a neckbeard from Channel Islands, the Dane Reynolds board. Always really liked Dane Reynolds and the way he surfed, so I wanted to make a board that was like that without having to buy a Channel Islands board. So anyway, you'll notice, first things first, the rocker's a lot less.
Yeah.
So what you'll notice is the rocker's a lot flatter on the Channel Islands inspired rounder outline board. So that means you're going to be floating on top of the water a lot easier. It's not going to be pushing water as much with that curvy nose like on the Timmy Patterson board. That's why typically grovelers are going to be flatter rockers, because they'll just float on top of the water, like a fish or a mid-length or a longboard or something like that. Something that the board and the surfer have to generate the speed. The wave isn't going to generate it for you. You're going to typically want something with flatter rocker. Now, along with that, a wider outline is better than a thicker board. So if you're going to be riding a surfboard in mushy waves, typically you'll see guys that surf really well will be riding a wide board like a fish or some sort of groveler, like a pill-shaped board or something like that, because it's disky and it's wide and it keeps the surface area on the face of the water. A thicker board will help you paddle a little better, but if it's narrow, when you're surfing it, it's still going to want to sink down into the water. That's why you'll see guys like John Florence riding those, what is it, the Ghost or something like that? No, the Padillac, that's what it is. The Padillac, how it's like super thick in the middle and holds its foam all the way through the nose, but it's narrow. And they'll take a 9-foot board and shrink it down into an 8.0 and go surf Jaws on it. It's because they keep it narrow and short so it fits in the steep wave, but they'll keep it thick and low rockers so that you can paddle it really well. So you can get away with riding a shorter board in bigger waves. But anyway, sorry, we're getting on a tangent here. So shorter, this board's shorter. The Timmy is 5'11", the Sullivan surfboard is 5'9", and a shorter, rounder outline. You'll notice on the waves that I was just surfing right now that I had to work a lot less to generate speed. There's a couple that I kind of just stood there and floated. If I would have tried that on the Timmy, the board would have just sunk. And they're both the same thickness. They're both 2.5. One's 19 and one's 18.88. So technically, they should have the same general amount of volume, probably. One's just stretched out and one's just squashed together. So, you know, another thing, back to the tails, is the tail on the blue board is a chop tail. So there's a lot more surface area on the back of your surfboard. So when you're coming through those turns, notice on a few of the turns that I did, the tail will actually slide a lot easier. And that's due to the amount of surface area you have in your tail block back here. It'll keep your board afloat a lot easier, so it'll want to drift more. That's why a lot of the times fishes will tend to slide. It's got something to do with the fins for sure, being a twin fin or a keel, but it also has a lot to do with how wide the tail is and what the bottom is, if it's V bottom or if it's single concave or if it's flat. Now this thing is single concave to flat, so it should be a bit drivey, but because the tail block's so wide, it'll swivel around a lot easier. So if you want more drivey turns, you want better speed control, to sum up the whole deal, ride a narrower, longer surfboard. If you want fast, flowy, and effortless surfing, ride something shorter, wider, and bigger tail block. So that's kind of my 2 cents. And one thing I always like to do is I always try to ride the same exact fins in every surfboard. And what I have in both of these surfboards is the Timmy Patterson TP1 templates. And they're both exactly the same, so it makes it a very even keel to be able to tell differences between surfboards. Now, one better step that I could have taken was actually take the fins out of this board and put them into that board when I was going to paddle out, but I know they're the exact same thing, so it's not really that much of an issue. But anyways, that's kind of my 2 cents on rails and outlines on surfboards. If you guys have any notes, definitely drop them in the comments. Don't know everything, so I love learning from you guys. And if I fuck something up, tell me that I fucked it up, and maybe I'll fix it next time too. But thank you guys for tuning back in. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the deal, and we're gonna try to keep this ball rolling. So tell your buddies about us, and you know, it might make it a little easier for us to make some more videos. So thanks for tuning back in. Go get off YouTube and go get in the fucking water.